There is a pattern that almost every man who has ever been in a relationship has experienced, and almost none of them have fully understood. The pattern of losing her interest, not through any dramatic failure, not through any obvious mistake or clear betrayal or visible deterioration of the qualities that produced the initial attraction, through something quieter and more gradual and more confusing than any of those things. She becomes slightly less available. The responses come a little slower. The warmth is still there, but it is further away than it was. The specific quality of attention she was giving, the attention that felt so alive in the early stages, has become something quieter and more routine, something that resembles comfort more than desire. And the man, sensing the shift, does what feels logical. He tries harder. He gives more. He becomes more present, more attentive, more demonstrably devoted. He does everything that the conventional wisdom of relationships suggests he should do to show her that he values what they have. And the interest recedes further. This pattern is one of the most painful and most common experiences in the domain of attraction and relationship. And it is almost universally misunderstood, because the man experiencing it almost always draws the wrong conclusion from it. He concludes that he has done something wrong in the specific, that some particular failure or some particular insufficiency in his behavior has produced the withdrawal. And so, he searches the specific details of what he has done for the error that will explain what is happening. The specific details are not where the explanation lives. The explanation lives in the architecture of desire itself, in the specific psychological conditions that desire requires to remain active, and in the specific ways in which those conditions change as relationships develop and as the man's behavior in response to the relationship changes. My name is Niccolò Machiavelli. I have spent many conversations on this channel describing the psychology of desire and attraction and what produces genuine wanting in human beings. Today I want to apply everything I have described to this most specific and most painful question. Not to assign blame. Not to describe women as capricious or unreliable or strategically withholding, but to give any man who genuinely wants to understand what is happening an accurate map of why it happens so that he can understand it rather than be mystified and hurt by it. I want to begin with the most important foundational observation about why interest is lost. Interest is not a static quality. It is a dynamic one. It requires specific conditions to remain active. And when those conditions change, interest changes with them. Not as a decision, as the natural output of the psychological systems that produce and maintain desire. The wanting system that I described in earlier conversations, the neurological architecture that produces genuine desire rather than comfortable familiarity, is activated by specific signals. And it is deactivated by the specific changes in those signals that occur as relationships develop. The three primary signals that activate the wanting system are uncertainty, distinctness, and the perception of genuine value in what is being wanted. Uncertainty keeps the wanting system engaged because the wanting system is calibrated for the pursuit rather than the possession. The gap between where you are and where the desired thing is produces the neurochemical state of desire. When the gap closes, when the possession is complete, when the uncertainty resolves, the wanting system quiets. Distinctness keeps the wanting system engaged because the brain is a pattern recognition machine that stops registering what it has fully processed. The person who is genuinely unlike anyone else encountered before requires continued cognitive engagement that maintains the sense of aliveness that desire produces. When the person becomes fully familiar, when the pattern is complete, the brain stops finding them interesting in the same way. The perception of genuine value keeps the wanting system engaged because desire is fundamentally oriented toward things that are worth wanting. The moment the perception shifts, the moment the thing being wanted begins to seem less genuinely valuable than it initially appeared, the wanting system recalibrates accordingly. These three signals, uncertainty, distinctness, and perceived genuine value, are what produce and maintain desire. And they are all, in different ways and through different mechanisms, undermined by the specific changes that occur in a man's behavior as the relationship develops and as the interest of the woman in it becomes clearer. Understanding exactly how this undermining happens is the foundation of understanding why a woman loses interest. The first reason a woman loses interest is what I would call the closing of the gap through excessive availability. In the early stages of attraction, The gap between the man and the woman is real and present. He is not entirely hers. His attention is not entirely directed toward her. His life is organized primarily around his own direction, his own work, his own building, and she is a welcome addition to that life rather than the organizing principle of it. This gap, this genuine distance between what she has of him and what she does not yet fully have, is the condition in which the wanting system is most active. The pursuit is alive. The outcome is uncertain. The distance between where she is and where she would fully possess what she is pursuing sustains the neurochemical state that genuine desire produces. As the relationship develops, most men close this gap, not through any conscious decision, through the natural expression of genuine feeling. They become more available, more attentive, more present, more organized around her and around the relationship as its importance in their life becomes clearer. And the gap closes, not all at once, gradually, through the accumulation of small increases in availability and attentiveness and devotion that each individually seem like the appropriate expression of genuine care for something genuinely valued. But as the gap closes, the wanting system quiets. Not because she no longer values what she has. Not because she is ungrateful for his devotion or cold toward his genuine care. But because the architecture of desire does not distinguish between the good reasons for closing the gap and the bad ones. The wanting system responds to the gap itself, not to the intentions of the man who is closing it. The practical lesson is the most counterintuitive thing I know how to say about desire. The man who maintains a genuine life outside the relationship, who has something real that draws his attention away from it, who is genuinely elsewhere sometimes because his life is genuinely full enough to take him elsewhere, does not experience the closing of the gap in the same way. Not because he is managing his availability strategically, because the fullness of his life genuinely maintains the conditions that the gap requires. His direction is still genuinely his. His attention is still genuinely divided between her and everything else that genuinely has a claim on it. And the gap, maintained not by strategy but by the genuine fullness of his life, maintains the conditions in which desire continues to operate. The second reason a woman loses interest is what I would call the dissolution of distinctness through familiarity. In the early stages of attraction, he is distinct. He sees things differently than the people she has encountered before. He has a particular perspective that is specifically his rather than borrowed from the consensus around him. He is, in the specific sense that the wanting system responds to, genuinely unlike what she has encountered before. As the relationship develops, she teaches him. She learns his patterns of thought and his characteristic responses and his particular way of seeing things. She learns what he will say before he says it. She learns what he finds interesting and what leaves him cold and how he responds to any given situation with enough accuracy that surprise becomes increasingly rare. And as surprise becomes increasingly rare, the specific quality of cognitive engagement that genuine distinctness produced begins to fade. Not because he has changed, because she has learned him. Because the pattern is now complete enough that continued engagement with it requires less active processing than it did when the pattern was new. This is not a failure of her attention or her appreciation. It is the natural operation of a brain that has successfully processed something and no longer needs to allocate the same resources to it. The man who maintains genuine distinctness across the development of the relationship is the man who continues to develop, who continues to think genuinely new thoughts and form genuinely new perspectives and encounter genuinely new experiences that change him in ways that are visible in the quality of his engagement with her. Not because he is performing novelty for her benefit, because he is genuinely engaged in the ongoing development of his own thinking and his own understanding in ways that naturally produce the continued distinctness that familiarity without development inevitably erodes. The man who stops developing, who arrives at a settled position and remains there, becomes familiar in the specific sense that the wanting system finds uninteresting. Not because he is bad, because he is known. And known things, as I have argued throughout this channel, do not occupy the wanting system in the same way that genuinely unresolved things do. Continue developing. Not for her specifically, because development is what makes a life genuinely worth living. And the continued development that makes a life genuinely worth living produces, as its natural byproduct, the continued distinctness that familiarity without development erodes. The third reason a woman loses interest is what I would call the erosion of perceived genuine value through the withdrawal of standards. In the early stages of attraction, his standards are visible. He is not available to everyone. He is not interested in everyone. His attention is a resource that is directed selectively and that therefore carries the signal of genuine value. She is in the position of having earned something from a man whose standards made the earning meaningful. As the relationship develops and as the interest of the woman in it becomes clearer, most men relax their standards in ways that undermine the signal those standards were sending. They become more accommodating, more willing to adjust their behavior in response to her preferences, more inclined to overlook things they would not have overlooked in the early stages, more organized around her comfort than around the genuine standards that their own values require. And as the standards relax, the signal they were sending changes. The signal changes from this man has genuine values that he maintains regardless of what it cost him to this man will adjust his values in proportion to how much he wants my approval. And that shift in signal, from genuine values to managed approval seeking, changes the perception of genuine value in a way that the wanting system immediately registers. Because what the wanting system was responding to was not the man who was good at managing her. It was the man who had something real that he maintained regardless of whether the maintaining produced her approval. The man who relaxes his standards in proportion to his fear of losing her has, in a specific and important sense, demonstrated that the standards were not genuinely his, that they were contingent on the situation rather than the expression of something fundamental. And standards that are contingent on the situation do not produce the perception of genuine value that standards maintained regardless of the situation produce. Maintain your standards, not as a strategy for maintaining her interest, because the standards are genuinely yours and because a man without genuine standards is not a man worth the sustained investment of genuine interest regardless of how much he wants that interest to be sustained. The fourth reason a woman loses interest is what I would call the replacement of genuine presence with anxious attention. There is a specific and important difference between the quality of presence that a man brings to an encounter in the early stages of attraction and the quality of attention he brings to it as the relationship develops and as the fear of losing what he has begins to shape his behavior. In the early stages, his presence is genuine. He is there for the encounter itself, for what is actually happening between two people who are genuinely interested in each other. His attention is on her and on what is between them rather than on the monitoring of how the relationship is going and whether she is still as interested as she was and whether the specific signals she is sending are positive or negative. He is present, not monitoring. As the relationship develops and as the investment in it increases, most men shift from genuine presence to anxious monitoring. A portion of their attention moves from the actual encounter to the continuous assessment of how the encounter is going. They begin to read her signals with an urgency that reveals the underlying anxiety about whether the interest is still there. They become more attentive in the specific sense of monitoring more carefully rather than in the specific sense of being more genuinely present. And she feels this shift, not necessarily consciously, as a texture. The slightly too careful quality of a man who is attending to how she is responding rather than to what is actually between them. The slightly too eager quality of a man whose presence has become organized around the management of her response rather than around the genuine quality of the encounter itself. And this quality of anxious monitoring produces in her exactly the response it is trying to prevent. Distance. Not because she is cruel or deliberately withholding. Because the anxious monitoring communicates something that genuine presence does not communicate. It communicates need. And need, as I have argued in other contexts, is the signal that most reliably undermines the response it is trying to produce. Return to genuine presence. Not as a strategy for appearing less needy. As the honest expression of a man who has enough going on in his own life that the specific quality of any particular encounter, however much it matters, does not determine whether he is okay. The fifth and most fundamental reason a woman loses interest is what I would call the disappearance of the man she was drawn to. This is the deepest and most important of all the reasons I have described. And it underlies all of the others in a way that makes it the primary explanation even when the specific mechanism appears to be one of the four I have already described. The woman does not lose interest in a man. She loses interest in the man he has become since the relationship began. In the early stages, she was drawn to a specific man. A man with a particular direction and a particular way of seeing things and a particular quality of presence and a particular set of standards and a particular quality of genuine presence in his own life that made the encounter with him the specific encounter it was. As the relationship develops, that man changes. Not dramatically, gradually. Through the accumulated adjustments and accommodations and reorganizations that the development of the relationship has produced in him, he is more focused on the relationship, more organized around her preferences, more available than he was, more accommodating than he was, more willing to let his direction be redirected toward the relationship itself as its primary organizing principle. He is, in the specific sense that matters most, less himself than he was. And the woman who was drawn to a specific man finds herself in a relationship with a man who is progressively less like the man she was drawn to. This is not her fault. It is not his fault in the sense of a deliberate failure or a conscious abandonment of what made him worth being drawn to. It is the natural consequence of a man who allowed the relationship to reshape him in ways that cost him the specific qualities that made the relationship possible in the first place. The prevention of this dynamic is the same as the prevention of everything else I have described today. Be the man you were before the relationship began. Not because the relationship should not change you. It should. Genuine intimate relationship is one of the most powerful forces for development available in human life, and the man who goes through it unchanged has not been genuinely in it. But the changes should make you more fully what you genuinely are. More developed, more capable, more deeply yourself, not less yourself. Not more organized around her preferences, not less directed toward your own genuine direction. The relationship should add to the man, not replace him. And the man who remains genuinely himself, whose direction and whose standards and whose particular way of seeing things continue to be genuinely his across the development of the relationship, is the man who maintains the conditions in which genuine interest can be sustained. Because what she is interested in is him. And as long as he is genuinely there, genuinely himself, genuinely the man she was drawn to rather than the managed and accommodating version of that man that most relationships eventually produce, the interest has what it needs to remain genuine. I want to close with the most honest observation I can make about everything I have described today. The prevention of lost interest is not a project in the management of her psychology. It is a project in the maintenance of your own. Everything I have described, the maintenance of the gap, the continued development that preserves genuine distinctness, the holding of standards that preserves the signal of genuine value, the return to genuine presence rather than anxious monitoring, the refusal to allow the relationship to replace the man it was built upon, is about him. About what he maintains in himself. About what he continues to build in himself. About the specific qualities of genuine direction and genuine development and genuine presence in his own life that produced the attraction in the first place and that, maintained across the development of the relationship, are what genuine sustained interest actually requires. The woman does not lose interest in the man who remains genuinely himself. She loses interest in the man who allowed the relationship to make him less than he was. Remain what you were. Not frozen in the early stage of what you were. Continuing to develop from the genuine foundation of what you are. Building forward from your genuine direction rather than being redirected away from it by the accumulated pressure of a relationship that has gradually become more important than the man at the center of it. The relationship is worth building. Genuine intimate relationship, sustained across genuine time and genuine difficulty, is one of the most significant things available in human life. But the man at the center of it must remain a man, with his own direction, his own standards, his own quality of genuine presence in his own life, his own genuine development that continues regardless of what the relationship produces or requires. That man does not lose her interest, because he remains what produced it. And what produced it was always, at its root, him. Genuinely and completely himself. Go be that. Every day. Regardless of what the relationship produces or requires or demands. Be that. And trust that the interest, genuine interest in a man who is genuinely worth being interested in, will take care of itself.